The part of this that's still with us is the idea that we have, for centuries, written to commonplace topics, commonplace themes. From here to the end of your education, don't get the idea that you've got to come up with something completely original when you write. A year ago, for instance, when I hosted a course at Central Lakes College called The America of Mark Twain, I was pretty sure that those research papers, a lot of them were going to be about the Civil War and slavery. And those students all knew that they were not the first people who had researched and wondered about and written about those. Don't get bent out of shape over that. It's a natural thing. We have through the centuries written about the same things again and again and again. And when you go through the process of invention, whether you're writing a paper or whether you go over to someone's house, to be a good guest, you're going to sit at the dinner table and you're going to come up with things. You're going to invent things to write and speak about. I think it's one of the most exciting aspects of any creative or imaginative project, the business of invention. And as a teacher, I'm doing it all the time. What are the topics? What are we going to be talking about? And I think that's all pretty obvious. In another video a while back, I remember taking a little break from a wedding and trying to talk to you about the idea of arrangement. Arrangement is the second house of rhetoric, and that's nothing more than the idea of giving form to something. Form is the fulfillment of a desire, and I'm thinking of a wonderful man in my 8 o'clock class up at Central Lakes College, and I won't name him, but he's got a baby coming. His third child is on the way. And when that baby comes, as I joked with him, you want that baby to be a baby. You want that baby to have one head, 2 eyes, little fingers, etc. Same thing with all the things in the world, whether they're natural or man-made. I came in here expecting this building, the Miller Center, to fulfill the arrangement or the form of being a library. And I look around and you know what? It is a library. It's gorgeous. A little while earlier this morning, I took my sons out to a restaurant. We had a wonderful breakfast. I expected Eggs Benedict, and it fulfilled the form that Eggs Benedict always fulfilled. Same thing with discourse. Poems should be poems. Novels should feel like novels, and essays should feel like essays. Whether you write them with the traditional 5-paragraph form, 7, 8, whatever you decide. Arrangements, house number 2, and it has to do with fulfilling form. Content is the business with invention. I feel like I didn't do the greatest job covering the idea of style with you, but style is the third house of rhetoric. Once you decide on a topic, once you decide what you're going to write about, and once you decide about the how with arrangement, you've also got other how questions to answer. What is going to be the style of what I'm writing about? You can think back to all kinds of things. You can think back to that business with highbrow, middlebrow, and lowbrow. That ridiculous lesson where I actually showed you a little fashion show, me walking back and forth. You could think about the tension between the grand style, which I talked about by my wood stove not too far back with the prose of Hemingway, or the grand, the epic style. And here you can think about William Faulkner, or any writer who really goes for that, the fulfillment of the formal. You know that you have probably a particular way of speaking when you're around someone of authority. If you go into a job interview, for instance, you're probably going to have a style that's appropriate to that job interview. And 3 or 4 hours later, when you're with your friends, wherever you go, you're going to be speaking as you would with your friends. You might speak in vernacular, you might use slang, you might be a little bit profane. So we've got all these different kinds of styles that we speak and write in, and I was just trying to bring it to your attention. I don't think you can teach someone a style, but I've found in the years that you can make students mindful of it. And those are the first 3, invention, arrangement, and style. Memory is the 4th house of rhetoric. The ancients had no patience whatsoever for people who could not remember things. And here in the 21st century and the latter part of the 20th, we have all kinds of intellectuals that think that electronic devices like the one I'm using, the computer that I have in that bag there, the phones that we all have that we're always reaching for. Walter Ong, for instance, thinks that modern memory is being damaged, actually, by these devices. I can't live without them. I love gadgets as much as anyone. But there is some evidence that says that years ago, we used our memories in more strenuous ways than we do now. We don't have to remember things down if you can pick up an iPhone and speak into it. 25 centuries ago, there wasn't a lot of paper and pens sitting around. You had to remember. And I'll leave it to you to decide whether or not our memories, our imaginations are being fundamentally damaged here in modernity. But to repeat something, I don't think the world of school really does good things to our memory that we think it is. It's finals week here at St. Cloud State. It's quiet, it's Saturday morning, but I tell you, later on in the week here, this place is going to be full of undergraduate students and graduate students cramming to get all sorts of facts into their heads so they can negotiate these exams. You know how that is. You cram and you cram and you cram. 2 weeks later, you couldn't even pass the same exam. Maybe not even 2 days later. Is that the proper use of memory? I don't think so. I'd rather have you understand a few faculties, abilities to live in the world, rather than cram you with a whole bunch of facts. That's why the list of things you're going to need to know for this last quiz really doesn't go past, I don't think, 15, 20 items. The last element of rhetoric is delivery, which is the territory of a speech actor. I'm delivering right now. I'm trying to bring you a little bit of content here in early December at St. Cloud State University for our little college, our wonderful college up north, Central Lakes College in Comp 1. I'm talking, thus I'm delivering. Well, I'm going to keep continuing to do that. I can't wait for the second semester to start. Can't wait for my next online Comp 1 class. Can't wait for my Comp 2s. I can't wait for 8 o'clock on January 9th where I'm going to walk into a very large classroom on the eastern part of our campus. There's going to be 45 students in there taking classical mythology from me. That's a big truck to drive, and I will be delivering. I will be talking. And we could go on and on. I just had some Central Minnesota homeschoolers approach me recently and asked me if I wouldn't mind being their graduation speaker. It's not going to be a very big graduation, but I've done that before. It's the territory speech acts. It really doesn't have that much to do with Comp 1. But if you take speech at Central Lakes with Thurman or any of the other speech teachers, you are going to be doing one heck of a lot of delivering.
I feel a real joyfulness, the kind of happiness that's reserved for middle-aged English majors as I stand and try to get to the end of this lesson in front of one of my favorite buildings in the world. This is Riverview, one of the oldest buildings on the campus of St. Cloud State University. And if any of you transfer down here from CLC, I hope you get to take a class or two in this building. It has been recently renovated. It is completely elegant. And it's made out of the old St. Cloud yellows, the brick that was made in this part of central Minnesota over 100 years ago. To give you a little more trivia that you probably are going to find unhelpful, the English department used to be in this building, and I learned about these very ideas that I'm teaching you about when I was a boy back in the 80s in these very classrooms. A young version of me also taught here. Sadly, the English department was moved over to not a very pleasant building at all down the river, and it was taken over by speech communication people like Jeff Bynum, one of my friends. I love Jeff Bynum, but I told my students a year ago when I was teaching in 151 over there, Building 51B, that the professors, the English department professors and the speech communication professors should have had a fight in this parking lot, just like on Anchorman, to see who gets to be in this building. They're running through my list here a little bit more. I just want to re-communicate to you that 25 centuries ago, this discipline that I'm so passionate about was conceived of for three distinct purposes. We've already talked about it. Let's put them before you again. The first of these purposes was law. When we started organizing ourselves into towns and cities, we knew that we had to have lawyers, to keep things straight. And there's different kinds of lawyers to this minute, all these centuries in the future. You cannot be a lawyer in this or any other country without being a natural-born rhetorician. I don't know, probably 80,000 people in the city of St. Cloud, where I am today. Probably a few of them are going to get in trouble today, and they're going to need lawyers. You know how that goes. The second large area where rhetoric was deemed to be important is politics. Again, right about the time we started organizing ourselves into cities and towns, regular communities, we knew that we would have people driven by hierarchy that would rise to the top and be in charge. And those people generally are called politicians. Now, I don't know how you feel about politics, but there's no doubt in the next year This country, as I've said before, is going to get its undies in a serious bundle over who gets to be the next president of the United States, and who the senators are going to be, and who the congressmen are going to be, and who the mayors are going to be. And every fall, we go and vote for them, depending upon whether or not we believe in their rhetoric or fall for it. It's up for you to decide. So politicians are most definitely by nature rhetorical animals. The third place where rhetoric was conceived, and this is sort of a big general catch-all category, has to do with the epidietic or the ceremonial. And some of you may have already behaved in a rhetorical way in an epidietic context or situation. I think of all the places where people get together anciently to celebrate anything. I was talking with Larry Kellerman the other day, our iconic librarian at CLC. He's been there 35 years. He's going to try to retire this year. He's not going to get away with it. We need him next year too. But eventually Larry Kellerman is going to retire from Central Lakes, and there is going to be one heck of a retirement speech, actually numerous speeches given on his behalf. I know this because last year at workshops in June, or May rather, at Central Lakes College, it took us 3.5 hours to retire 11 people. There were PowerPoints, people bawling, people giving speeches, the retiring teachers themselves giving speeches, saying goodbye. And that's just so human and so natural that we would acknowledge teachers in that way. I hope to retire from Central Lakes College, so 15, 20 years, that'll be me getting cried over and stuff. Or not, I guess we'll see. You could think retirement party. You can think of graduation next spring, if any of you are going to graduate. Well, there's probably going to be speeches at Brainerd Senior High School there, where Central Lakes College graduates and the teachers march in with all their academic regalia. You can't graduate without a speech. It's automatic. And there's sadder moments too. I don't mean to get all morbid on you, but a year ago, not a year ago, but last spring, in the month of May, when I was going over pretty much the same material, like my precursors have gone over this material for 25 centuries, I stood in my classrooms, my Comp 1 classrooms, and said, you know what, I got a pretty good idea that I'm going to be giving a funeral oration, so to speak, a eulogy, panegyric, for my sweet father. I knew he was sick, I knew he wasn't going to live through the year, and lo and behold, in September 6th of this year, I stood in a church and spoke epidietically, ceremonially. Church full of 200 people, and I got through it. I cried a little bit, but it's just one of the lonely offices of the eldest son. When your father dies, you stand up and speak, and that's rhetoric. So those are the three purposes, and I hope you remember them. This is real life rhetoric stuff, and one way or another, you're probably going to be speaking in this way. Some of you are going to be best men at weddings, bridesmaids, right? You're going to help retire people. You're going to bury people. It's what we do. People sit, and someone stands up and makes a speech, just like in the Odyssey. Couldn't be more ancient, or more wonderful, or more human.